Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. To the Ukraine we go. It's been a while, but he's been there over 30 years. Rabbi Yaakov D. Bleich is the chief rabbi of the Ukraine, and unfortunately in the news once again. So, Rabbi Bleich, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, hi. I'd say good morning over here. It's morning already.
It's good morning here in America, too. So, I know things are heating up in the news. Tell us what's been going on over the last 24 hours.
Let me tell you what happened on Friday, because Friday is really when things started getting clear what the plan, what Putin's plan is. On Friday, there was a proclamation publicized in LNR and DNR. In 2014, the Russians moved into Ukraine into two regions on the eastern border of Ukraine, Lugansk and Donetsk. And they basically occupy these places, and they've been shooting from there for the last 8 years. So Ukraine has been under a certain siege, or I would say war. People, over 14,000 people have been killed. However, Ukraine has been careful, and since the main fighting stopped, they made some sort of, let's call it some sort of ceasefire. And now what happened was suddenly the Russians announced that they're going to be evacuating civilians from those two places, Lugansk and Donetsk, because of the aggression of the Ukrainians. This is regular Russian propaganda going on over there. So once we heard that, we understood that this is a place that they want to use for war. They evacuated over Shabbos, over 10,000 people, civilians from that area, and they began shooting. So over the last 24 hours, 136 missiles and different shootings from different types of mortars and guns and different things took place. This is, almost like Lahavdil. I feel like, in Israel, when the Palestinians are shooting from Gaza, the difference over here is that the Ukrainians have not reacted. They've kept quiet because they understand that these provocations are there to provoke them, to try and get them to shoot back. The Russian proxies are shooting from residential areas. If the Ukrainians shoot back, they'll hit a residential building or something, and that will be a pretext for Putin to say, okay, I have to come in, I have to save the Russians. So that's basically what's happening. So we see the beginnings of what his plan is, which is to use probably Donetsk and Lugansk and to start basing his soldiers in there.
Now, how many Jews are still left in the Ukraine?
Okay, in Ukraine in general, there's between 350 and 400,000 Jews that we know of.
That's a large and very large number.
Yeah, that's a lot of Jews. It's one of the largest communities in Europe.
And what is the feeling? Do they want to leave? Do they want to stay? Because
so far, people are not leaving. Even Israel that's trying to get its people, its citizens to leave, and they have, according to their estimation, between 10 and 15,000, and they've been blasting all over that everybody has to leave. Only like 3,000 of them left. The flights to Israel are not even all full. So that's for Israeli citizens. As far as Ukrainian citizens living here, Jews, so some have gone to Israel. Unfortunately, when they get to Israel, they don't always get the nicest welcome there because they're trying to pressure people to make Aliyah now. So people would go to Israel now, let's say, to sit it out. They have relatives there and everything else. When they come in, they're right away bombarded by the Israeli border patrol. What are you coming for? What are you going to do here? Why don't you make Aliyah? Why don't you make Aliyah? And unfortunately, that caused some of the families from my community to cancel their plans. They were planning to go to Israel because they heard the way some of the people were welcomed there. But in general, there's no mass exodus at this point.
So, but is there fear going in the communities in general, Jews and non-Jews? Are people very concerned? Do they think it's going to blow over? Because if they're not leaving, it sounds like are they taking it seriously?
So it depends what part of it. Everybody understands that Putin is going to do something. The fear is the fear of the unknown. They don't know what he's going to do. The Americans are screaming he's coming into Kiev. The United States evacuated its embassy and its embassy staff in an unprecedented move. They cleaned out the entire embassy of all communications and computers and didn't even leave one U.S. Army Marine to guard it. It's being guarded by the Ukrainian National Guard now.
I guess they're afraid of what happened in Afghanistan, so they're not taking any chances here.
Yeah, I mean, it really apples and oranges to try, to compare what happened in Afghanistan. But I guess they're trying to do tshuva for what happened in Afghanistan here. It's just that it's not the same situation. But the Brits, the Canadians have also evacuated their embassies to Lvov. That's Western Ukraine, closer to the Polish border. And Israel is also talking about, evacuating, maybe their embassy staff to Lvov as well. So on the one hand, you see a very, very serious, and Biden is saying it now. They even came out that they know the Russians are coming into Kiev, and they have a list similar to what, if you remember, the cards when the Americans went into Iraq, who they're going to get and arrest all the different members of the government and get it that as if the Russians have this list of who they're going to get when they come into Ukraine. So that's quite frightening on the one hand. The other hand, people don't think it's realistic for Putin to be able to come into Kiev now. He may shoot missiles. They see him more coming in on the borders. However, one of the things that Putin is doing is a psychological warfare where you don't know what he's going to do, right? He's laughing all the way to the bank, so to speak, because the Americans said at 1 a.m. on Tuesday night to Wednesday morning, that's when he's attacking. And now here we're on Sunday and he hasn't attacked yet. Although he has begun to attack in Donbass, but that's mostly in that region that he was occupying anyway. A lot of shooting just to make noise for people to say, oh, there's shooting. But 136 shots were fired into Ukrainian controlled territory over the last 24 hours. So the attacks, to some extent, we can say it began, but people aren't running as quickly as we would expect. Now, the Jews do have a feeling of being besieged. There's a siege going on. The ports are closed. There's war games going on in the Black Sea, the Azov Sea. So basically, Ukraine is, for all practical purposes, ground locked at this point. They don't really have access. They have access, but not normal access to the sea. And then on three sides, you have Russian soldiers. Three sides of the three different borders: the north, Belarus, and the south, and on the east. So there is a feeling of pressure that something's going to happen that is pressuring people. At the same time, there's no mass exodus at this point yet.
I find that surprising because the way it's spoken about, at least in the media here, is that it's any day. The president of the United States said any day. It's Wednesday. He's had a press conference on Friday. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening.
So,
So, but from what I'm hearing from you, Chief Rabbi, is that the sense of urgency isn't as great in the Ukraine as we're hearing outside the Ukraine.
Right, it's not. I'm saying, obviously I'm an American, so I'm in touch. My family's in America and everything else. So obviously I know what's going on in American news also. I see it. And it is, people, the Ukrainians felt that the Americans were causing panic too early. The Ukrainians at this point, the Ukrainians also see that it's happening. But they just felt that the Americans built up that panic too high, too early. And they shouldn't have done it that early when they weren't sure exactly. But I guess, they wanted to err on the safe side. What had exactly a week ago, we had a call with the Israeli ambassador to Ukraine. On Thursday, the Israelis said, doesn't look like anything's going to happen. Strengthen your security. Make sure no attacks on shuls or Jewish buildings. We had to, get more and stronger security than we usually have. On Friday, Shabbos, the Israelis suddenly said everyone must evacuate. All of the Israeli citizens, and they forced employees of the state, say even teachers in the schools, to evacuate. So on Sunday, we had a call with the ambassador, representatives of the foreign ministry, Nativ, that's the prime minister's office, and the Sechnut, and they're saying everyone has to evacuate. So I asked them, what changed from Thursday to Friday? Did you get new information, or is it just because Biden said that you should do it? Because Biden tells us all to get vaccinated also, right? The question is, I'm saying, is it real, right? And they said, well, even if there's a 1% chance that something will happen, we don't want, we'd rather err on the safe side. So the Israelis are being quite, I would say also outspoken. The question is if they're just doing it along with the Americans or if they have their own intelligence sources. But that raised, there's no question about it, that the Israeli directive raised within the Jewish communities more of a feeling of pressure and panic when they saw all the Israeli teachers that are within the community, they're embedded, they're part of our community leaving, it definitely raised that feeling more.
Now, what are the amount of Jews or the numbers of Jews living in the areas where you're saying the Russians are most likely to invade? They won't go to Kiev, but they'll go to the outlying areas. Is there a large concentration of Jews in those areas?
Okay, in 2014, when the Russians came into those areas, most of the Jews left. At that time, there were approximately 20,000 Jews living there. We estimate today that there are probably 2,000 or 3,000 Jews, most of them elderly. Actually, I got a call last night from a young man that studies in our yeshiva here in Kiev. His mother, his grandmother are still there. If they do evacuate into Russia, which the Russians are trying to do, is to evacuate the civilians. He wanted to know if we can be in touch with the Jewish community where they'll be going in Russia, that to try and get them help. His grandmother's 94 years old, etc., and everything else. So there are still Jews left there, mostly elderly and people that couldn't leave for whatever reason. Whoever was able to, most of them came over to mainland Ukraine, to Ukraine-controlled territory. The people living in Kiev, the rabbi of Donetsk is living in Kiev with a lot of members of his community. Rabbi Pinchas Vyshevsky, the rabbi of Lugansk, is also living in Kiev now. They both started communities here and shuls here, and they're both developing, based on starting with their people. So there aren't as many Jews as there were, but there still are a few thousand Jews living in that area. And that's the area of Donbass that is already occupied. But if they come into Ukraine further, and Putin's, for all we know, let's say the easiest or the lightest goal that he'll have is to get himself a land connection to Crimea, which he illegally occupied in 2014. And right now, the only connection to Russia he has is with a bridge over the Kerch Straits. So if he tries to get a land connection, so he'll be going through places like Zaporozhye and Kherson and Mariupol, where there are still, sizable Jewish communities. So those parts, that part of eastern Ukraine is still, I would say within sight of Putin. We don't know what it'll be. He may want to take over, and landlock Ukraine and then go into places like Odessa, where there's a very, very large Jewish community. There are two communities actually there in Odessa. So all of these, these things, it's the unknown. And this is the fear of the unknown that we're dealing with. And many of the communities have made, contingency plans, what to do, even if they have to evacuate for a couple of weeks or for a short time.
And how is that? Who's going to coordinate the evacuation? Going to leave? There has to be some leadership to help people. Is that something that you're helping put together? Contingency plans?
I'm working together with the communities that have these plans. I'm working together with them in Odessa, the Odessa community, and other communities that are actually working on plans, what to do in contingency. I'm working with them, but not all communities are well, the Rabbanim all stayed. No Rabbanim left. So there'll be people in the communities that will help and that will, lead any effort, whatever has to be done. But not all the communities are making plans.
Some of the, but those that don't make plans could end up in a lot of hot water when things heat up. Now, I was always under the impression that nothing was going to really happen until after the Olympics were over.
You know something? In the previous time when Russia attacked Crimea, it happened during the Olympic Games, when the Olympic Games were going on in Russia. So now the Olympic Games are in China. So it's a distraction. Again, you could never. He's very unpredictable, Putin, and therefore it's hard to say this will happen, that will happen, this won't happen, that won't happen. We don't know. He's part of his game is his unpredictability, that he doesn't want you to really know what he's going to do, and it's part of the psychological warfare. He's achieved a lot of his goals without even attacking. Ukrainian economy, which was rebuilding over the last couple of years, is now taking a dive because of the lack of foreign investment, because people don't know what Putin is planning to do. So these things are part of his, modus operandi. You think I'll come in then and there, I'll go, at a different time, different place, and all of this is playing out now.
Was there a cyber attack, or are there cyber attacks against the infrastructure of Ukraine right now?
There was last week a cyber attack against the Ministry of Defense and against the major banks in Ukraine. And the Americans identified it as having come and started in Russia. As we know, Russia has been perfecting these cyber attacks over the last number of years, over different countries, whether it's the United States and obviously Ukraine, which also gets these attacks quite often. If there'll be an attack, we're sure that that'll be part of it. In Russia, we call it they've been calling this type of warfare from Russia hybrid warfare, which means it's not only shooting. There's cyber attacks and there are other things, and Russia's basically perfected a lot of this stuff to be able to, hit major infrastructure, whether it's electricity or things like that. The only thing is that Ukraine is not 100% computerized country. In other words, Estonia, for instance, which is one of the small Baltic countries, everything in the country works on computer. Russia did a cyber attack against them, and they're able to basically shut down the entire country. In Ukraine, it's not so easy because a lot of things are still working the old-fashioned way. So even though they could cause a lot of havoc and damage with cyber attacks, but that's not going to be enough to get the country down. But that's one of the things, for instance, the community in Kiev that I lead, we're dealing with a summer camp that we've winterized over the last couple of years, I think, 2 years or so, we've been winterizing it. And one of the things that's on our list that we have to get is a generator, that in case, God forbid, the electricity goes because of a cyber attack, whatever other reason, if the grid is knocked down, to have a generator that's going to be able to keep, giving us electricity, whatever it is that we need, so that the people that are there will be able to continue to function.
We're going to talk about how people are going to be able to help you too. We're speaking with Rabbi Yaakov Bleich. He is the chief rabbi of the Ukraine. Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner, and we're speaking live in Ukraine. And the chief rabbi of the Ukraine, Rabbi Bleich joins us. Yaakov Dov Bleich joins us, and we're looking at the situation which is changing and evolving as we speak. Okay, Chief Rabbi, let me just ask you this question. So things are moving. You have about 300, 400,000 Jews that are there. Anytime there's war, there's going to be this location, even if it's only a small portion of the country. So it puts you in a perilous situation. So you were talking about evacuating people. How are you doing it? Do you have to raise funds for that? Is the funds in the community already there? Give us an idea of what's transpiring.
Okay, what happened was when we realized over the last couple of weeks what the possibility of what may happen. So a number of communities, we've been together, we've been in touch together to see what we can do. Obviously, it's not easy, but one of the problems is because of the threat of war, the local philanthropists, the people that would normally support the community, are having a very hard time giving money because they don't know what's going to happen. As it is, the economy is taking a hit. So we set up contingency plans. However, the money for it, we're trying to raise. We're doing a crowdfunding now. For instance, the Kiev community is doing a crowdfunding fundraiser now on charity.com/help Kiev. But I also reached out to Jewish organizations, including the World Jewish Congress and the European Jewish Congress, Ronald Lauder, Moshe Kantor, and other different philanthropists to try and see what they can do to help us. The idea that we have is, and this is different communities, because we own campgrounds 100 kilometers outside of Kiev to the west of Kiev, because that's where we're looking to get as far west as possible. So we have begun winterizing it already, and a number of the buildings have heat. So we're pretty lucky because we can go there to our own place, and if God forbid anything happens, we'll be 100 kilometers away from Kiev. We have to add heat to some of the buildings. We have to buy a generator. We have to stock up on food. All these things we have to do, but at least we have our own place where to go. Some of the others are looking around at different places they have to rent. Obviously, when you further west you go, the prices are going up now, and it's challenging. It is very, very challenging. The idea is that if, God forbid, there is a war, it'll be difficult to travel within the country. There'll be mayhem. A lot of people will be running. A lot of refugees, and the roads are going to be clogged. and the army will be using it. A lot of different scenarios come to mind.
Because
But right now,
because the
we're
president of the
trying
United
to put together-
States said, I think, or I read in the media here, there could be a tremendous amount of casualties should any invasion take place. So we're talking.
yeah. God forbid. I mean, this is something that he said, and I was questioned by different journalists over the last week where he picked that number of 50,000 casualties. You know something? I don't know. I think he took it out of a hat, and I think that some of it is really to try and scare off the Russian population because nobody likes body bags, and if there are, God forbid, there's war, there's losses on both sides and casualties on both sides, and nobody's looking for that. It's senseless. It doesn't make sense. People are trying to figure out, what does Putin want here? He wants Ukraine not to join NATO. Ukraine is not joining NATO within the next 5-10 years in any case, right? So what is he trying to accomplish here? And this is part of the thing that we're trying to figure out, because this war is senseless.
So what is the thinking in the Ukraine as to what he's trying to accomplish?
In Ukraine, people think that he's just trying to make sure that the standard of living here doesn't get better than it is in Russia. If the economy will develop, if he just leaves Ukraine alone, they'll build up. Their economy will develop. It'll become a prosperous country. It's a country with a lot of natural resources and a very intelligent population that's really driven to work. And that's what people think. That's what that's what people are thinking here.
But there has to be more to it than that. If Putin wants to invade and he has such a massive amount of troops.
Like I said, number one, he doesn't want NATO in his backyard.
But you said it's going to take 5 or 10 years. It's not happening anyway so quickly.
Right. Number two, he wants to be respected as a superpower. He feels the breakup of the Soviet Union is one of the greatest tragedies of the 20th century. Number three, he's looking to get a ground bridge from Russia to Crimea. I mean, all of these things are all part of his puzzle, what he's trying to do. But then again, we can't creep into his head to think to know what he's thinking. But these are the different things that people are seeing of what he's trying to do. He's trying to rebuild, the Russian pride, the Russian empire. He thinks that Ukraine is his sphere of influence and he should have control. And many people are saying the similar way that the United States had the Cuban missile crisis. They didn't want missiles in their backyard either. The difference is that Ukraine is not aggressor. They haven't ever attacked anyone. As a matter of fact, Russia signed the Budapest Memorandum in 1994 that they'll respect and guarantee the borders, the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Russia was a signatory to that, along with Britain, France, and the United States.
Now, you mentioned that Israel has been advising people to leave and also got its personnel to leave as well. Did you have any help from Israel security-wise to protect institutions, buildings, schools, nursing homes? Did the Israeli government and security help at all in doing protection for any of these places?
The Israeli government will not do protection overseas, but they did help with advisors and advice. They helped us, do evaluations of the communal buildings. That's an ongoing project that has been going on. However, it's the responsibility of the local community themselves to do it. This is one of the questions I actually asked the ambassador last week with the Mishrat HaChutz. I said, you guys are leaving and you're leaving the community behind. Would you be willing to help us financially with the security or, with food? These are the two things that are the most important things, humanitarian issues that I think they would be able to help with. However, at this point, Israel is only able to help its citizens and people that want to make Aliyah.
Now, depending how things play out, even though it seems like it's a distance away as Pesach, but for what can happen, not only could it affect the day-to-day with food, but can also affect matzahs and Pesach and distribution as well. If I'm looking a little long-term. Yeah,
it's not so long-term. All matzah factories are working already. So we have basically Ukraine, which happens to be a very, very agricultural and developed food industry. Most of our food is made locally. So we have a machine matzah factory in Kiev. There are hand matzah factories in Ukraine as well that produce hand matzahs and export them all over the world, but also sell them within Ukraine. So wine is produced in Ukraine. Grape juice is produced in Ukraine. The staples that we would need for Pesach are produced locally. And we hope, with God willing, that that we'll be able to supply the communities as we have in the past with the locally produced food products kosher for Pesach. However, it's definitely something that we're taking into consideration. It's something that we're thinking about. Purim's around the corner and Pesach is not far behind. So it's obviously something that we're going to have to deal with. But at this point, we're dealing with the immediate emergency, and that is to have a contingency plan in case we have to evacuate, to be able to get people out. And we've begun, this voluntary evacuation last week already, Tuesday. People that were afraid because of what the Americans said that they're going to attack. A number of people already evacuated to the camp on Tuesday, another 2 bus loads on Thursday, but the majority of the community has still stayed put in Ukraine, in Kiev.
Now, notwithstanding what's happening with Putin and Russia, are you seeing levels of anti-Semitism rising in the Ukraine?
No, thank God not.
Thank God. That's
it's in 2014 there were attacks on Jews and on Jewish communities, but we were able to catch some of the perpetrators, and we figured out they were being sent by Russia to attack Jews and Jewish communities in Ukraine to make the Ukrainians look bad. This is a modus operandi straight out of Russia's handbook that took place during World War II and after. The Soviets were very good at this, at the diversions. They would send in
concerned that they're going to do it again this time around, also to send anti-Semites to serve the population.
Once we call them out on it, we know about it, we strengthen the security. It's very difficult for them to do it. They can only do it when people are still not sure of what's happening. As a matter of fact, you should understand that one of the reasons Biden keeps on saying what he's saying, they're going to attack, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're planning these provocations, is because by calling out these things, it does stop to a certain extent. Obviously, it stops them from being able to use some of these things that they're doing. For instance, there was an announcement on Shabbos that these Wagner group, these Wagner soldiers from Russia, came into Donetsk to booby trap buildings and blow up buildings to make it look like the Ukrainians attacked. This was called out immediately. This intelligence is going out immediately. And the reason why it's going out immediately is because they're trying to stop Russia from using these tactics in this hybrid war.
What is the Ukrainian government doing to help Jewish institutions? I mean, they have their hands full, but is there any help, any assistance that they're giving you and the community?
There's a great level of cooperation, first of all, coordination with the government and the Jewish communities throughout Ukraine. But something that they've been doing now that they weren't able to do 8 years ago is they're putting out police cars in front of shuls and Jewish buildings so that there shouldn't be any of these provocations. They're helping with that amount of security they're helping with.
So you find they've been very helpful in that area, but
in that area, yeah, I think that's the only area that we can expect at this point for them to be helpful.
Right, and if any evacuation has to take place, you're pretty much on your own with that.
Yeah, well, the government is going to have, like you say, they have their hands full with everything they're doing. But the way we're evacuating, you can't expect them to evacuate the Jews and not everybody else. The Jews are a part of the community here. If it's good for Ukraine, it's good for the Jews of Ukraine. It's bad for Ukraine, bad for the Jews of Ukraine. We're not in any way here, standing out or trying to do things for Jews or say that things are more difficult for Jews than they are for others.
Now, you mentioned you have a campaign that you're raising funding. How is that coming along?
Baruch Hashem, very good. We went live on Thursday, and we already raised over $100,000. Obviously, our goals are, more closer to $700,000, but we're still, talking to, like I say, major Jewish organizations and philanthropists. And Mitzvah Hashem, we hope that we're going to be able to get at least for step one, which is to stockpile food, buy the necessary, generator, put the heating in the buildings that don't have it, strengthen the heating in the buildings that do have it. For instance, one of the buildings has a heating system that's electric. We got to switch it over to a wood burning heat so that, if God forbid the electricity goes, that we can still heat the building. We have to, all of these things were taken care of by my team here in Kiev, of my people from within my community, the security people and the logistics people that worked out a whole plan of what they're doing.
The $100,000 is a good start, but you're looking to raise $700,000. You're looking to reach out to not just philanthropists, I would assume, to just individuals as well to be involved in the campaign. Am I correct?
100%. That's what the crowdfunding is all about. This $100,000 is crowdfunding. That's what it is. It's people sending in $18, $180, 500, 1,000, etc., and everything else. It's just people sending in money to charity.com/help Kiev.
So let's give out that information one more time.
That's charity with a D, CHARIDY.com/help Kiev, HELP KIEV or KYIV, help Kiev.
So just to reiterate, Chief Rabbi, so the feeling is that when Russia invades, it's not a question of if, but when. It's only going to be a small portion of the country. The outs are similar, close to where they invaded last time, but it's not going to be a full-scale invasion of the whole country, including Kiev. That's what
we don't know. We don't know. That's the Americans and the Brits and are saying that it will be a full-blown invasion. But I'm just saying the feeling that people have here, they think it would be like a suicide bombing for Putin to try to come in. He'll take a lot of casualties, and it'll cause a lot of casualties in Ukraine. And people, it's just hard for them to believe that this is going to happen, that the Russian people will go to war with the Ukrainian people.
So, but if God forbid that does happen, does that change your plans?
Yeah, well, that will cause us to do a mass evacuation of our community. There's no question about it.
And where would you evacuate to?
No, if Kiev, if the place that we chose, which is 100 kilometers west of Kiev, is going to, God forbid, be under fire, we prepared a place further, closer to the Hungarian border. The only thing is that the infrastructure out there to be able to take care of the people, kosher food, etc., is much more difficult. And then the prices are much different. You have to rent space, and this is Ukraine. You could rent from someone, and in the middle of your rental, come and say the prices went up, pay double. So that's why we're trying to focus on our own place. We feel much more secure and comfortable in a place that we own, that everything will, that will be okay. From what our security people are saying now, that should be okay. However, where things change, we're going to have to be able to react spontaneously.
So you'll be able to move quickly to the area near the Hungarian border?
With Hashem's help. With Hashem's help.
With Hashem's help. But that probably would increase your costs, as you're saying, too.
Most definitely. No question about it.
Wow. Precarious situations. So we wish you a lot of luck with hopefully nothing is going to happen, but it sounds like something is going to transpire from what you're saying, from what the American administration is saying, what the intelligence is showing, that the Putin will do something. Hopefully it won't be a massive invasion of the whole country. But if that does get to be the case, you are planning for the provision. By the way, how many people are you looking to evacuate in case, God forbid, whether it's a portion of the country or the whole country, how many people are you looking to evacuate?
I'm responsible for the Kiev community. So, the people that are connected to the shul and to the community, you're talking about, let's say, it's over 1,000 people that we're in touch with on a regular basis. So in our space that we have now, we have prepared 320 places, which can be stretched if we have to, but there are also 2 neighboring campuses that we negotiated with in case we can take another 400 or 500 people. So we would be able to take 700-800 people there just to this place that we have prepared. The first step 1, 300.
But it sounds to me, if there's an invasion and people start panicking, which they're not doing now, you probably could end up with more than 800 people that are going to want to be evacuated.
Well, then we'll have to work them with places more west. We have, all of this stuff, because we're in touch with communities throughout. So, we have that ability to be fluid, because if some communities are left and not invaded, nothing happens there. So we're able to move around. For instance, Uman has, a nice few hundred, most of them are foreign Jews living there, and most of them have not evacuated. So, and Uman has a big infrastructure as well. They have hotels, they have food, they have the big kitchen that Shiner supports for Yom Neroim that's there, that's able to, to help people if people will be needed. So one of the places that we're looking at as a contingency is Uman, believe it or not.
Yeah, because they already have an infrastructure there. So that makes sense. So you have kosher food there, and you have hotels, and you have Jews that are there. So it does make any sense. Chief Rabbi.
Another very important point is we have an old age home, an assisted living home within Kiev, where we have elderly Jews living. We can't evacuate them. So part of our thing is to, shelter in place. And part of the plan is to, we bought sleeping bags, flashlights, possibilities for them to cook, to, convert the basement of the building to a bomb shelter. All of this stuff is is what we call shelter in place. But there's, going to be a lot of people that are not going to be able to evacuate.
And you have a generator there, or you just use it?
We have two generators. We ordered. We didn't buy them yet, but for that building to keep them going.
Rabbi Yaakov Dov Bleich, the Chief Rabbi of Ukraine, thank you for being with us. Just give us that crowdfunding source one more time again.
With Charity with a D, CHARIDY.com/help Kiev.
And thank you for joining us.
So I hope that we'll have a week of Suras Tovas.
Amen.
And
Amen.
it'll be good.
Hopefully
Thank
we'll
you
get spared the invasion. Hopefully, I said, hopefully you'll be spared the invasion. Hopefully.
Yeah. B'ezrat Hashem. We hope so, and things will be good. And it'll be Suras Tovas.
Amen. Thank you, Chief Rabbi.
Thanks, Zev. Thanks for your interest, and thanks for having me on there and getting the word out.